Good evening, Rob. Can you hear us? Thank you. We can't hear you, though.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I can hear you, yeah. Testing, can you hear me, Jeff? Yes, testing.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Loud and clear.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Newcastle City Council special meeting for Tuesday, May 2nd. It is 6:30 p.m. Councilmember Clark will be joining us remotely tonight. All right, item one and only of our study session is an annual town hall meeting planning. In front of you, you have a copy of the town hall meeting proposed agenda, and I will turn this over to City Manager Pingle.
So we wanted to get an agenda in front of the council just for your consideration, to be able to provide feedback. We tried to, especially since the last meeting, kind of input some of the feedback that we got just from the general comments. So primarily being that the meeting should be one that provides for ample opportunity for people to ask questions or provide comments, so that we're listening to the public as much as we're presenting. And so as far as presentations go, we just planned on a couple of short 5 or 10 minute presentations. The first one being the strategic plan that the council recently adopted. And so we kind of at least walk through the approach that we're for the strategic plan and maybe some of the main items, but really it would be about this is the approach to letting it be a living document, a living strategic plan, rather than one that is, stagnant. And then providing Director Hoffman an opportunity to talk about the comprehensive plan update with the community and the opportunities to participate in that. And then really leaving the rest of the meeting for a general Q&A. And then really just the thought with the breakout Q&A was just if people have more specific questions, we can be available to them. So if they have specific questions about a development or about a process or whatever, we can have the community development director available to talk about those things with them. If they have questions about streets projects or parks, we can have Director Bronze available for that. I can be available for other questions. City council members can make themselves available either on their own or as a part of one of those breakout groups. And so that was kind of the thought there, was we have time for general questions, but then we also have kind of breakouts. If you want specific information, we'd be prepared and available for that. So that's the general approach we took with the agenda, and with that I'll leave it up to the council.
All right, so I do believe we have lost Councilmember Clark, and Director Bronze is monitoring him for him to rejoin. Councilmember Charbonneau, I saw a hand pop up.
Yes, thank you. So I sent some of this feedback to City Manager Pingle as well. I would be really, I think there's a question of what would the role of council be during the breakout Q&A. I would love to personally see it where maybe a couple different council members can go to different departments and sort of designate that. For example, I think I would love to go sit with Director Hoffman as the chair of Economic Community Development. I think, for example, Councilmember Villasenor could go sit with Finance, and folks can sort of choose where they want to go. I think that could be helpful. And I would too, I would even opt to, maybe adding more time to the breakout Q&A and stealing some time from the audience Q&A, just because I know for folks sometimes it can be really hard to get a question in when it's one large group setting all at once. I had individuals that wanted to ask questions or wanted to share something that had to come up to me afterwards at the last town hall, just because it can be harder. So if you have a more specific question, it might be easier to navigate if there's multiple groups. So I would be open to maybe like 15 minutes audience Q&A and add some more time to break out Q&A. I think that was my sort of feedback on the agenda.
Okay, and I just want to note that Councilmember Clark has rejoined us. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I have
No,
a poor
no
internet
worries.
connection.
No worries, and we're heavily relying on your raised hand feature tonight, so we're monitoring that. Councilmember Lagotia.
Yeah, I would differ on not reducing the time for the audience Q&A, because last year also, like, we found that they had a lot of questions, and the rest of the team, the rest of the citizens also like to listen to, because some of them, like, when they ask, let's say, a question which is like common in everybody's mind, and they want to listen. So 15 minutes is like too less, and we've never done a breakout session. So, I mean, this is like, we'll get more than 100 people and of all ages, and generally more on the, more on the senior side. So I think the whole breakout could get confusing for them. So, and we all sit in one room, so I don't know, people will be like confused as to, okay, where am I supposed to go now? Like this room, that room. And so I don't know how the breakout, what are the logistics of the breakout and how that would work. I think that could get confusing.
Yeah, so we didn't anticipate that we'd go to different rooms. We just anticipated that department heads would break out into different areas of wherever we are, and people can go wherever they want to ask their specific questions. We didn't anticipate that we would leave the general room. It would just be more of a, okay, if you have more specific questions, we would be available for that.
Well, and a number of years ago, we did have tables that were where directors and other staff members attended, or they were tending to that table, and it worked fairly well. They were just kind of spaced out around the room, so people did know. It was just a matter of making sure they're labeled, and if they couldn't find a table they were looking for, then they could be directed to it. I'm sorry, Councilmember Villasenor.
Oh, no problem. I just, in thinking about the agenda, so we have the staff presentation piece. Then, in my mind, it feels like the next Q&A should be questions about what they've heard during staff presentations, so that staff can answer those broadly. Okay. But here's the next part, which I think is a little bit muddy for me, is that the next part I feel should mirror public comment more than Q&A. People can stand up, make a public comment, because when you ask a dais with 7 people sitting on it a question, who answers that question, right? And because we probably have differing opinions on certain things, it feels like that session could get a little muddy. So if the second part, so we give people an opportunity, again, let me just try to clarify my thought here. We have staff presentations, we have questions regarding anything they heard during staff presentations. Public comment for people who need to, who want to make statements. And then questions certainly can be handled during the breakout Q&A, because then I don't want it to feel like a debate floor, because we do open up an opportunity. We do open up this possibility but we end up in a public debate between council members, and I don't know if that's appropriate at the annual town hall meeting. That's just my opinion.
I have to agree with you. My only reservation would be how do we, the public comment piece, because when, like for the Q&A, we've never regulated the time on it. Do we regulate the time on a public comment? This is, but I know, I hear you, and I think you are right, you're spot on about questions should be pertaining to the presentations, the immediate questions, but I also feel in the past we have gotten a reasonable amount of questions. And what I've done to manage response is we never know if it's going to be directed to maybe specifically a council member. And then, is there anything anybody would like to add? So there's definitely a win-win on both sides.
Yeah, this is the whole, if a question is asked of another council member, and a council member responds, will another council member get to address that question? I mean, what's the fairness of it all? That's what gets sticky here, I think, in terms of an audience Q&A that is open. And again, I want to answer all the questions that people have. I just think that we need to structure it in a way that allows people to get their questions answered, but doesn't turn into like I said, it doesn't turn into a public debate, which again, like I said, I don't think the annual town hall meeting should be a public debate between council members.
Totally agree. I like the public comment idea. Councilmember Griffin, and then I'll go to Councilmember Charbonneau.
I think that if we don't ask questions so that everybody gets a chance to hear them, if you break it up and maybe this group over here is asking questions or answering questions that everybody should hear. Now, last year when the questions were answered, you, the mayor, suggested who might be able to answer it. And sometimes that didn't go very well. At least they weren't happy with the answers they got. And I think that most of our time should be handled so that we are answering questions that they have, not questions that we suggest they might ought to have.
Councilmember Charbonneau, I'm going to put you on hold for one moment because Councilmember Clark hasn't spoken yet. So go ahead, Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nguyen. Can you hear me first of all? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. And again, I apologize for the remote call. It was not planned, but so my thoughts on the town hall are pretty simple. I think that the first two sessions or the first two portions about the strategic plan and the comp plan are fine, but I would like to see, this is for the public to ask us questions, and I would like to see the entire remaining time, all of us be asked questions. I've been to them as participants now last year as a council member and as a public member. So I think that one of the things that we can do to ensure that it goes smoothly is either set up a stationary microphone like we did in past years, or the person walking around makes sure they hold on to the microphone and don't relinquish it. I think that was part of our problem last year. And people will come up, I think, in the center of the aisle. They let them ask questions. We can't have a town hall and then say to them, well, you can only ask questions on certain topics. That doesn't make sense. It's for them to ask us whatever they'd like. Whether they want to make a comment or ask a question, we as council members should be ready and able and free to take all of that stuff, right? We shouldn't have any objections to that. So I would like to see the remaining time devoted to question and answer, and us at the dais. And if we could ask the person talking to please direct your comment to a certain council member if you have a question, and that could easily go from there. It would make it nice and smooth. And if another council member wanted to say something else about it, they could certainly chime in. But I think, I'm sorry I missed the first portion of the meeting, but I saw that there was an 8:30 stopping time, even with the proposed breakouts. I don't understand that. Maybe I missed that. It should be till 9 o'clock. So we have the full time. So essentially an hour and a half for people to come up, comment, ask questions. And I'm willing to stay after if they want to break out and ask me specific stuff. And I'm sure everybody else would be too. So I think in terms of the agenda, keep the first part the same, but let it be open mic, questions, comments, whatever it is for the remaining hour and a half.
Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I guess I'll start with clarification. So, City Manager Pingle, are you taking notes on what folks are saying and then trying to potentially amend the agenda in that way? Do you need a vote? Do you need more specific direction? Because I think we have different direction on different things.
Well, I guess at this point it's discussion. I certainly, I mean, from what we've heard, I don't have something to amend or to change it to just because we don't have agreement. But so eventually, yeah, I think we need to get to a place where we're either agreeing on a way forward or, that takes a vote. We'll need to put votes onto the regular agenda or the regular meeting. We can't do that in a study session because we didn't provide an opportunity for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would 100% agree with Councilmember Clark's point about the microphone either being stationary or not relinquished, like 10,000% yes. And I would agree a lot with, I think some of the things Councilmember Villasenor was saying about, wanting to just listen to people. I think if you're going to do it in a means where council members themselves are answering questions, we need to come up with a more equitable way to figure that out. I felt bad. I don't think Councilmember Griffin got to answer any questions at our last town hall. I think we were not really jumping back and forth, so we'd have to like rotate it or something like that if you want to do it. I think that gets kind of complicated. But I think the breakout is very doable, and folks, if staff do a good job of explaining like what each place would be. Just the two other things I had were, can we have, and it can be very quick, a plug either probably during staff presentations on here's how you can attend a city council meeting both in person and virtually if you would like to continue engaging with us, because we're going to have a larger audience than we normally do, and I don't want it to be a confusing thing for people of how they continue to engage if they were interested or had an issue about something. And then I wanted to be equitable too when it comes to, we didn't really get any direction on sort of how we were introducing ourselves or what we would do at the beginning last time. So if we could, maybe we could set like a guidelines for the 1 to 2 minute self intros, like what people might talk about, or just some more direction there than saying 1 to 2 minutes, because you could talk about literally anything in 1 to 2 minutes. So those would be my other notes.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you. So I don't think that I didn't hear anyone talking about telling the community which questions to ask. I don't know if you're, Councilmember Clark, if you're referring to just answering questions about the staff presentations. We initially had talked about having a little section after for that, specifically just so that doesn't get lost if people do have specific questions, and then moving on to more general Q&A. But, we do have a little bit of a time crunch, and I think, just personally, I think we do definitely plan on having people that won't give the mic away. I think that's going to be the easiest, fastest way to get people to have a chance to speak. But I like, the reason why I like how it stands now, where there's pretty equal time to audience Q&A when we're all sitting down and breakout Q&A, is because in my experience, people have different ways of communicating, and some people are very scared to ask a question in front of a large crowd, and I think it's good to give an opportunity where we are all committed to being there still, and the staff is still there, no one's running out the door, and people have an opportunity to go up and have a quiet space to ask a question. I feel that's really important to provide for those people that are just a little nervous to ask their questions. So that's where I'm at, just why it looks the way it does through what the discussions have been so far between Scott and Linda and I. So I don't know if anyone has any comments after that.
Councilmember Lacotia.
I agree with Councilmember Charbonneau's on how to attend a council meeting. If possible, can we do like a 5-minute demo on that? Like just show them, especially the online. A lot of people have asked me questions on how do I get on YouTube and where do I see the meeting? I don't see a Zoom link. So just a quick demo on how to sign up to get those emails? And then once you get that email, how to click on it and where to go? If you can just spend like 5-7 minutes, on the projector just to demo that.
Any other hands? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. So, again, I'm sorry I missed the first part of the meeting. I had a computer problem, but did we discuss the venue at all? And I'm going to assume that you didn't. So, and maybe you did. So if I'm repeating, sorry. I drove by the Risden School, about a week ago. There was a baseball game. Every parking spot was full, right? Every spot. And I talked to the city manager about it, and baseball is going to go for a couple of months every night of the week. So I do not want to go to the golf club, but having it at the school is now a little bit problematic, because if we invite the public to the school and they can't park, boy, we're going to hear it. And so we have one or two options the way I see it. And I'm not excited about recommending the golf club, but I think the school for the least next couple of months is not an option. And we just can't invite them and have no parking. So we either go to the golf course or we wait until baseball season's over. But I think, we do need to decide the venue if we're going to do it in just less than a month. Thank you.
Councilmember Villasenor.
Thank you. I know we're budgeted for the golf course, and I know there were a lot of people who preferred a lower cost of perhaps what Risen would be. But we need to decide as a group what's more important. Is the date more important, or is the venue more important? Because if the date's more important, that answers the second question pretty straight away. If we want to provide this opportunity for the public to have this town hall meeting on the date that we're scheduled in early June, or that we're at least considering for early June, I think that answers our question. So I think it's a question that each of us has to ask ourselves. I personally want to give people the soonest opportunity to meet with us. So I like the June date, and so I think that would put me in the camp of earlier date at the golf course.
Well, and like Councilmember Clark mentioned, there's baseball there pretty much every night of the week. And Councilmember Lakotia did comment that a lot of the people who attend our town halls are of the older generation. And if we don't have adequate parking, I said from the very beginning, if we get parking complaints, I clearly advocated for the golf club based on that reason. And I would turn all those parking complaints over to those who did not want to help me advocate. Councilmember Charbonneau.
Yeah, so I'll be candid. I obviously was pushing hard for Risen. I'm not going to be obstinate about this. Obviously, this isn't a situation where we can we can accommodate folks. So but the compromise to me in my head, and this is something I've talked about, and people have nodded in agreement, something I've said, and I would love for us to actually be actionable about this. To Deputy Mayor Sherlock's point about providing a diversity of means for people and spaces for people to give their input, I don't think we can have gatherings of folks to give us input, right? It could be another town hall, it could be a listening session where we just listen. We understand that the summer season is not for the middle school. I think I would urge folks to consider, maybe we have a summer town hall event in the golf course every year, and we can have that sense of decorum that I know is important to some folks, and also have a sort of winter or spring event at Risden and engage with that venue for the first time and give people something that's maybe a less intimidating setting, right? I know for me as a high schooler, I got the mailer about the town hall at the Newcastle golf course, and it felt intimidating to me, right? And I've talked with members of the public that also felt like that. So I won't be obstinate about this. I think the golf course makes sense, and I want to do what's best for the community, but I would urge folks to not think in a binary about this, and I think we could again, have more means for the community engagement. I think we all like it. I think we all like being out there and seeing people, and I would love to take some actionable steps towards that.
Okay, we're about 5 minutes from the beginning of our regular meeting. Any further comments or input for City Manager Pingle? Okay. All right. With that, I'll give you. Oh, that just popped up. Councilmember Clark. I looked.
So what is the next step from the city manager? Can you just tell us, please?
Well, I guess I would depend on what the council wants to do. If I'm seeing agreement on keeping June 6th and doing it at the golf course, we can move forward with that. Without taking it to a vote in regular session. I don't know that we came to agreement on the rest of the agenda, but we can certainly take the feedback that we've received and throw it back out to the council and go from there.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you good? Okay. All right. Everyone up here's good? Okay. I'll give you back 5 minutes. That's all I can do. Okay, good evening, everyone, to the Newcastle City Council regular meeting. It is 7 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. City Manager Pingle, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Villasenor.
Here.
Councilmember Lacotio.
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau. Here. Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock. Here. And Mayor Newing.
Here.
7 here and accounted for.
Thank you. We do have a quorum of 7. Councilmember Clark is attending virtually tonight. Will you please rise and join me in the flag salute? Okay. I'm sorry, I flip-flopped roll call and flag salute again. I do that often. All right. Is there any objection to approval of tonight's agenda as presented?
I'd like to add something.
City Manager Pingle?
2 changes. We found, want to thank Interim Director Rolfe. We found some discrepancies in the budget amendments. We want to pull that item and push it to the next meeting. And then in its place, we'd like to add adoption of an ordinance revising the 2023 salary schedule.
Okay. So the adjustment to the meeting agenda as presented is removal of item 11.2, an addition of an item revising the 2023 salary schedule. If there are no objections, I would like to make that item, the walked-on item on the salary schedule, item number 11.1. Okay. Seeing none, I show
Madam Mayor, 11.1 or 11.2?
11.1.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, sorry. All right, I will, if there are no objections, will please show the final agenda approved as amended. All right, moving on. Public comment. Are there any members in the audience who would like to speak? If so, please state your name, the neighborhood in which you reside, and you will have 3 minutes in which to speak. There is a countdown clock on the podium. Any virtual? Okay.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have one.
Okay.
And Kate, you're being promoted to a panelist, and then you can make your public comment.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Kate Langsdorf. I'm the Communications Manager for the City of Newcastle. It's good to see you all. I'm calling to let you know about an incident that occurred over the weekend. Sunday, I saw a direct message in one of our social media inboxes from a resident who was suicidal and who wanted help. I escalated the matter and help was sent. I don't know the outcome, but I hope this resident is doing okay. This sort of thing happens from time to time for any government communicator, and I'm grateful that I've had specialized training in handling these eventualities. Since I started here, I've made myself available anytime I haven't been either asleep or on an airplane. And though it's a lot of work for one person, I've been happy to be cheerfully responsive on our communications channels on nights, on weekends, on Christmas morning, and from my cousin's funeral. Because sometimes our residents can't wait. And because it doesn't cost me anything to be helpful. Full-time frontline communications staff saves resident lives. And a lot of the work I have done has been invisible to most. But I thought it was important to let you know about this piece of my work this evening. Thank you for your time, and very sincerely, thank you for the opportunity to serve. I've been filled with gratitude since coming to Newcastle. And time spent on gratitude is not ill spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Okay. Any further public comment? I'm not seeing hands. We good? Okay. All right, I'll close the public comment. Tonight we have two very important proclamations. So with us tonight is former Mayor Alan Dodderman. Alan is part of the Housing Development Consortium of Seattle, King County, and I just mentioned he's a former Newcastle mayor. So whereas all people should have access to safe, healthy, and affordable homes within communities that provide opportunity. And whereas the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development defines affordable housing as housing on which the occupant is paying no more than 30% of gross income for housing costs, including utilities. And whereas studies have found that each $100 increase in median rent results in a 15% increase in homelessness in metro areas and a 39% increase in homelessness in nearby suburbs and rural areas. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated many existing financial constraints for low and moderate income households. And whereas the Centers for Disease Control recognizes safe, healthy, and affordable housing within communities of opportunity as key social determinants of health. And whereas everyone benefits from affordable housing, including the people who reside in these properties, their neighbors, businesses, employers, and the community as a whole. And whereas the need for affordable homes across King County prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and the number of people experiencing homelessness had remained at crisis levels. And whereas united to raise public awareness, people, organizations, and communities throughout King County are participating in local Affordable Housing Week festivities to elevate the critical need to create healthy communities and ample affordable housing. And whereas the City of Newcastle endorses the goals, objectives, and purposes of Affordable Housing Week, and in doing so, firmly recommits itself to ensuring that our community's recovery from the crisis at hand is equitable and that all people in Newcastle live with dignity in safe, healthy, and affordable homes. Now, therefore, I, Linda Newing, Mayor of the City of Newcastle, proclaim the week of May 13 to 17, 2023 as Affordable Housing Week in the City of Newcastle, dated the second day of May 2023.
There we go. Do I have 3 minutes?
You can take all the time you want, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members, council member. Affordable Housing Week is, a lot of it, or most of it, is about bringing about awareness about affordable housing in our region and pretty much across the state. And I wanted to take this opportunity tonight to kind of bring your awareness of what the City of Newcastle can do with affordable housing. You know, Newcastle doesn't have that many opportunities for affordable housing. It's not really a priority area for affordable rentals, multifamily rentals. You know, most of those are prioritized around TOD stations or TOD development around light rail stations and other urban areas. But the City of Newcastle does have an opportunity to help bring affordable home ownership to the city. Back in 2006, I think it was, the city purchased land for right-of-way dedication for Coal Creek improvements down by Lake Bourne, or just south of Lake Bourne Park. And that property is still owned by the city. It is zoned for residential, I think R6, and it sits vacant. And it has been sitting vacant ever since Coal Creek improvements have been made, and ever since the Bourne Creek, I think, townhomes have been developed. And there are utilities to the property. It's just basically a pad-ready site for development of townhomes. And in 2014, there was an agenda bill brought to the City Council, Agenda Bill 14039. So if you want to look that up, that was actually an agenda bill. I'm not sure if it was brought forward at the recommendation of Carol Simpson, but the bill recommended that that property be made available for affordable housing. And I'm again bringing, making you, city manager and city council members, aware that this property is sitting vacant and it could be developed for affordable home ownership. You could probably get maybe 10 townhomes on it, maybe 12, who knows? I don't know. And you can work with Arch in figuring out how to deploy this property for affordable home ownership. And these would be, the affordable home ownership programs are for first-time home buyers, generally, individuals or families that are at about 60 to 80% AMI for our area median income. And there's a demand for it. There is a big demand for affordable home ownership. And you have an opportunity to take action on that. And I highly encourage you to do that. I think it would be good for the city, and I know that Arch would be very happy to help figure out a way to deploy that, whether it's through an RFP and you invite developers, affordable, nonprofit developers that do specialize in affordable home ownership, or what other means that you might find best to deploy that property. So thank you for listening, and hopefully you can do something with it. It's sitting there doing nothing. You might as well do something with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. All right, moving on. It's a very important week, Police Week, National Police Week. And with that, we have another proclamation. I would also like to welcome our King County Sheriff, Sheriff Patty Cole Tyndall, Deputy Mike Cross, and of course our Chief of Police, Steve Kajihiro. All right. Whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Newcastle Police Department and the King County Sheriff's Office. And whereas since the first recorded law enforcement death in 1786, there are currently 23,785 law enforcement officers in the United States who have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, including Deputy Richard A. Herzog of the Newcastle Police Department. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. And whereas 556 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, including 224 officers killed in 2022 and 332 officers killed in previous years. Whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 35th Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13, 2023. And whereas the Candlelight Vigil is part of National Police Week, which will be observed this year from May 9 through 20. And whereas May 15 is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff. Now, therefore, I, Linda Newing, Mayor of the City of Newcastle, proclaim that the City of Newcastle will observe May 19 through 20, 2023, as National Police Week, and publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation. Dated the second day of May 2023, I invite our officers and sheriff and chief, I guess, in the audience to please come up and feel free to speak, say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to attend tonight. I very much appreciate the City of Newcastle and the fact that you have issued this proclamation, but also that you are a valued contract city that contracts with the King County Sheriff's Office for your police service. So thank you for that. I will say that last year I had the privilege of actually going back to Washington, D.C. One of our officers was placed on the Law Enforcement Memorial. He was an officer that died in 2020, and it had taken us a bit of time to get his death ruled a line of duty that would qualify. If you remember, he was an officer, he had a stroke, and it was very tragic. But anyway, so I had the privilege of going back last year, and I will tell you, it is a very, very, I mean, I can't describe it. I mean, the families and all of the law enforcement officers that come from across the country to honor the fallen officers. And this year we are sending a cadre of 6 of our honor guard to participate because, as you said, it's a whole week of activities. But we felt it was so necessary for us, and me as at the time I was, actually I had just been appointed sheriff, to go back and honor. His name is Deputy Reggie Thomas, and he died September 7th, 2020. But the being able to honor our fallen law enforcement officers, I think, is so important. It's important for the community, but also important for the family and the law enforcement family. The men and women who work side by side every day with the officers who have given, and as you say, Mayor, the ultimate sacrifice. So thank you, and I just want to say I'm very privileged to be the sheriff and to lead the men and women of the King County Sheriff's Office. So, and thank you to the chief and to Deputy Cross. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. All right, moving on. Council comment. Councilmember Clark, do you want to start us off?
Thank you, Mayor Newing. I don't really have any comments. I just want to make a point about the agenda items. I'm sorry I didn't speak up earlier, but we already have an agenda item 11.1. So that should have been 11.4, what the city manager talked about. That's just, I think that's how it should go. That's all I have.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was really thankful to attend the Wren Schools Foundation annual breakfast not too long ago. There was a great performance by the Risden, I believe they called it Timberwolf Orchestra. Those kids got some very much deserved, I think, a couple periods off school, so good for them, and they play good music. And the other thing I just wanted to talk about, thank you, former Mayor Dotterman, for coming to speak about affordable housing. So I have the map of that plot in my council bag, and it had been given to me by the former city manager Wyman, who had had that same idea and talked about that item, and sort of, it's gone on for time and been lost, I think, a little bit in translation. So what I'd like to do is invite you and invite Arch to come to our Economic and Community Development Committee. We meet once a month, and to talk about that project and to really, really look at it and dig into it, because I know this work can be slow, but you're absolutely right. I think it's a great place where kids could grow up right across from Lakebourne Park, have really great access to a lot of things, and invite more people to be a part of our community. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Lacotia,
No comments, thank you.
Councilmember Villasenor.
Good evening. This month happens to be both AAPI Heritage Month and Jewish American Heritage Month, both of which we observe at the Villasenor household. Both the Jewish and Filipino cultures play a large part in the history of our nation, and being part of such a wonderful multicultural situation is really what it means to be an American. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to learn more about these cultures and their history and the roles that they've played in the formation of America. And of course, with any cultural exploration, try the food. So that's the thank you.
It's all about the food, right? Councilmember Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. I have no comment this evening.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
No comment.
All right, moving on. That brings us to the mayor's report. I also have in my notes that May is AAPI month, so thank you for bringing that up ahead. I also wanted to note that it is National Nurses Week, so to all of our healthcare professionals in Newcastle, thank you so much. And I don't know how many of you get to frequent the intersection of exit 7 and 405 at Northeast 44th, but voila, today I came home and there was a temporary traffic signal at that intersection. So that has been very interesting the past couple of weeks with that new opening of the new northbound on-ramp. So, and finally, on April 20th, I attended the Diamond Awards, the Chamber's Diamond Awards at the Stanhead Cultural Center. The event was very well attended. It was great to have it in person after 3 years, so thank you to the Chamber. And I also had the pleasure of giving the Mayor's Award to a very active and energized volunteer in the community, Jim Quigg. Okay, moving on, Council Committees, Finance Committee.
So the Finance Committee went over the budget amendment. Obviously, we already know that we're going to wait till next meeting to look at that. So look forward to that.
Economic Development.
Thank you. Really thankful to have President of the Newcastle Chamber, Verity Swearingen, is consistently attending. We had a member from the Planning Commission as well as local business owners. We talked about, we'll hear about K4C a little bit later tonight. We talked about how the Small Business and Nonprofit Organization grants, a $400,000 program of our ARPA allocation, has interviews are done for 24 businesses and nonprofits that applied for that. Big kudos to our staff for doing 24 interviews. That is a lot. And then we talked about some of the different business vacancies in Newcastle and potentially doing a town hall on housing afterwards from the House Bill 1110, sort of helping folks navigate that. And then we had a great chance to talk with local businesses about wayfinding and signs that we could use and what that technical assistance might look like for local businesses. So helping to flesh out that part for our community development department, which is the different $200,000 grant portion of our ARPA allocation. And if anyone has feedback on anything, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, and Salary and Benefits Committee has not met. Regional committees, any regional committees last week? Okay, ditto here. City Manager Pingle, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just wanted to bring your attention to a couple of things that are in the City Manager report. The first one's just, again, the legislative update that you've seen. One of the things that was pointed out was that the legislature did not deal with the Blake issue. And so we'll see how they move forward with that, whether to do a special session or if they wait until next year. If they're going to wait, and we're waiting on a July 1st deadline where that would affect us, we may need to discuss that. Several cities are starting to look at doing something local, so we may want to consider that. The other one was just, it's in the City Manager report as well, but they stocked Lake Bourne with fish. It was fun to go and watch them stock the lake, but just wanted to point that out. We got 500 pounds of fish in Lake Bourne.
And actually, a friend's son caught one the other day. So they are there. Okay, moving on, consent agenda. Is there any objection to approval of tonight's unanimous consent agenda as presented? Okay, if not, please show the consent agenda approved as presented. Moving on to public hearings, we have none, no unfinished business. We are at item 11.1, general business. I just want to note, in response to Councilmember Clark's comment, City Manager Pingle and I did agree we would put this at the top of the agenda. It does seem to be an elephant in the room. And it's not the most entertaining item, actually. All right, tonight's item 11.1 is the adoption of 2020, I'm sorry, that's the wrong, this was at the dais. It is adoption of ordinance 2023-654, amending Exhibit A to ordinance 2022-651, the 2023 salary schedule. City Manager Pingle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So again, the adoption of this order, that proposed action is revising the 2023 salary schedule to remove the HR and RM Director, City Clerk, Communications Manager, and Deputy Finance Director positions, and add a City Clerk / Human Resources Director position to the salary schedule. One of the items the City Council tasked me with when I first started, and as a part of my initial work plan, was to analyze staffing levels in the city. It's not uncommon for cities with our staff size to have combined roles for these positions. While every city is different, the City of Newcastle is structured in a way that provides the opportunity to be more streamlined from an administration standpoint. I wanted to make clear that the proposed organizational change is not based on any of the individuals affected by it, but by their performance. The change is based on how we can organize in a way that allows us to be more efficient and, most importantly, to reduce costs. While this adjustment, this is the adjustment that affects current staff, it's not the only adjustment that is or will be made. I do expect that this is the only one that would affect staff that are currently in positions. As we've talked about several times, currently in our community development department, we have a budgeted building inspector position. We have a second budgeted senior planner position. Neither of those positions are filled. And as Director Hoffman came on, I asked him to analyze whether he needed to fill those positions or if they could remain in contracts. And at this point, we anticipate that those will remain in contracts. It's not a call that we're going to make at this point, but I anticipate asking the same thing of the new finance director coming on. We have an open accounting analyst position, and she'll need to determine whether she needs that position or not. And so that would be another potential position that we'll consider whether it needs to be filled or not. And so the revised salary schedule is in front of you. again with those changes, and I'll turn it back over to the council for any questions.
Okay, any questions for City Manager Pingle? Councilmember Villasenor.
No question, but a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to thank Sarah and Paul and Kate for their tremendous contributions to our city. Change, evolution is difficult. It can be very hard. It puts into stark focus that the decisions we make up here affect people's lives, not just residents, but the lives of our staff members who have dedicated their time and effort to making our city such a terrific place to live in. So I'd like to say to those individuals, thank you so much. I have a tremendous admiration and respect for all of you, not only as professionals, but as people. And that goes with you. So thank you very much for everything you've done for us. I appreciate it.
Okay, I also have some comments, but I will go last. Any other comments, questions? Councilmember Charbonneau?
Yeah, I would just like to echo sort of what Councilmember Villasenor was saying. I have, I personally don't know Newcastle without these individuals, and I have so much respect for them. And, I think when I was running for office, people asked me, what does city council do? And I told them, I said, we have to, sit up there and make hard decisions with the information that's presented for us. And a lot of times there are no-win situations. And I think, obviously can't get into specifics. I think I just have a lot of respect for these folks. I think recognizing that we are a small city, but have even leaner staff than other small cities, and we're doing quite literally everything we can to be prudent with our finances. I don't think people can say that we're not trying to be prudent with our finances when we're looking at the way we're doing this. This is something I really don't take joy in doing, but I just have a lot of respect and appreciate the individuals, and I know the many folks that will go and listen to it.
Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Sherlock?
I wish I could speak as eloquently as my fellow council members, but all I can say is thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Clark?
Thank you, Mayor Newing. In a similar vein, I would like to thank the three individuals mentioned, Sarah, Paul, and Kate. We did hire City Manager Pingle to run the city as in the most efficient way, and we left that decision up to him, and I fully support his decisions. And I think as a group, we all can agree that, it's important to support our city manager and help him to manage the staff and the city in a most efficient way. So again, it's unfortunate, nobody likes to see people go, but we do have to make the best decisions for the majority of the people of Newcastle. That's what we work for. And that's what we have to keep our focus on. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. I have comments. They're a little bit long, but I promise I will not go over my allotted time according to our policy. I cannot find the words to communicate how angry I am over this proposal. The Human Resources, Risk Management Director, and City Clerk are two very large, important roles in a municipal organization. I have not seen a job description, but if there's only one Human Resources / City Clerk, how will risk management be absorbed? Our city attorneys have always pushed us to err on the cautious side. Now, are we hanging ourselves out on a limb with diminished risk management practices? A city clerk is mandated by RCW, but some small organizations partner those duties with other aspects of operations. All three positions impacted are fully funded in 2023. Why now and without reasonable warning? To me, this feels like action without a lot of discussion. and no transparency. When seeking election in 2015, I made a commitment to this role that I would never lay off people unless it was clearly a last resort. This is not a last resort. The economy is reasonable, and municipal layoffs are not widespread in our region. In fact, agencies are having trouble finding people to fill those vacancies. I'm taking this move very hard. I broke one of my commitments, a commitment to provide top drawer services and a commitment to protect our professional staff's livelihood, also to make Newcastle a desirable employer. I have fought. I have prayed this move would not materialize. Now, all I can do is vote no. When I learned of this, I was flabbergasted. The organization with which I am affiliated appears to have disrespect for stellar team members who have a critical role in the organization. These team members hold certifications respective to their position. They have grown and advanced in their career here. They are loyal, trustworthy, stepped in when and where needed, and possess countless other qualities and reasons why they should not be laid off. This is a cold-hearted cut, a word I have always avoided when the topic of any reduction came up during budget discussions. They are long-tenured team members with institutional knowledge and a majority support of this council. And with a majority support of this council, they will go like they made no impact and have no value to the organization. The team members affected by this move include a communications coordinator. As I recall, in the last community survey, communication was one of the top items most important to our constituents. Now this role will be assumed by an expensive consultant who has no investment, knowledge, or connection with our community. Communication will become sterile. The staff reductions also include a human resources risk management director of 20+ years and our city clerk, who helped navigate us through the pandemic. I am deeply disappointed I'm deeply disappointed the city manager has chosen to bring in new staff rather than choosing to create a cohesive team working with our existing amazing professionals. I truly hope this move does not diminish the morale of our team. Newcastle, get ready for service reductions. They have arrived. Okay, Councilmember Lakota.
Again, I would like to thank the 3 staff members. Change is inevitable. I myself have gone through layoffs but stood back strong, and with time things change. And I would like to at the same time support the decision of our city manager. I move the adoption of Ordinance 2023-654 amending Exhibit A to Ordinance 2022-651, the 2023 salary schedule to remove the Human Resource and Risk Management Director, City Clerk, Communications Manager, and Deputy Finance Director positions, and add a City Clerk/Human Resources Director position as presented.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Lakota, seconded by Councilmember Griffin, to adopt Ordinance 2023-654, amending Exhibit A to Ordinance 2022-651, the 2023 salary schedule to remove the Human Resource and Risk Management Director, City Clerk, Communications Manager, and Deputy Finance Director positions, and add a City Clerk/Human Resources Director position as presented. Councilmember Lakota, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I think enough has been said. Thank you.
Councilmember Griffin, anything to add?
Yes, so oftentimes when people who have not been managers step into a management position, they find that they either need to increase the staff or they need to reduce the staff. And we ask the city manager to come in and look the staff positions over and do what he would or suggest what he would find as improvements, and I think he's done the best that he can. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologize. I don't have more discussion to add. I would just, I don't know the right vernacular. I'm just human, and I would like a second to process. I think it's a little tense right now. I don't know if I could, moving for a recess would be appropriate. I would like to, if other folks have more to add, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to adopt ordinance 2023-654, amending Exhibit A to ordinance 2022-651. The 2023 salary schedule to remove the Human Resources and Risk Management Director, City Clerk, Communications Manager, and Deputy Finance Director positions, and add a City Clerk/Human Resources Director position as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carries 6 to 1 with Mayor Newing dissenting. Moving on to item 11.2. Motion regarding King County Cities Climate Collaboration membership. I believe, Director Hoffman, we have a presenter.
Thank you, Mayor. We do. This next agenda item is a presentation and discussion for the King County and Cities Climate Collaboration, also known as K4C, commonly known as K4C. The King County Cities Climate Collaboration is a partnership between the county and partners to coordinate and enhance local government climate and sustainability. Tonight we have K4C co-chair Matt Kuhar, Senior Climate Program Manager at King County Department of Natural Resources and Parks Director's Office, on behalf of K4C to give the presentation, and then discussion will follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Council and Mayor. Thank you for having me. My name is Matt Kuhar. I work for King County on Climate Action, and I really appreciate being invited here to share. I know it's tough to hear tough decisions being made here, and hard to follow some of those issues, but I really appreciate being here to share what I've been asked to share about. So, yes, I work as a staff co-chair with a city staffer from the city of Kirkland to support this work called the K4C, because there's a lot of C's there, King County Cities Climate Collaboration. And this is a voluntary but formal partnership between King County and many cities in King County. We have 20 cities. The Port of Seattle and in King County are the formal partners in the K4C. And our mission is to accelerate collective climate action in King County for the health of all people, our economy, and the environment. And here's a map of the current K4C partners. We welcomed 4 new cities in 2022. And when I presented to your council's committee meeting, there was a question about, well, are there any others exploring joining right now? And CTAC has consideration of joining the K4C on the council agenda for next week. So that's kind of late-breaking interest. And so together we represent about 85% of the county's 2.3 million residents. And so what do we do through the K4C? And that's the focus of kind of the couple slides that I'm going to share. So we really kind of believe that partnering on climate action is important, that climate change doesn't respect or know boundaries, and that if we work together, we can be more efficient, use limited resources in a collaborative way, that we can share the ways that local governments, cities in the county have an important role in climate change, that we can coordinate and share limited resources and staff across jurisdictions, that we can set shared targets, that we can come together and collaboratively identify what we want to work on, and we can align our outreach and messaging. A foundational part of the K4C work has been to come together and develop shared commitments between K4C members. Example commitments are advocating for strong and comprehensive climate policy. There's a cohort of local elected officials that actively engage, especially at the state level, on policy issues and have engaged over the last few years helping support and shape some of the foundational climate policy issues that have been adopted, things like the Climate Commitment Act, Clean Fuel Standard, local climate and comprehensive planning issues and requirements. We have other examples of the commitments are to advance climate inequity in our planning work that local jurisdictions do, to integrate climate preparedness and understanding and addressing local climate impacts into the work of the collaboration, and a big focus on collaborating on local code issues, everything from building energy code to electric vehicle charging and things in between. Some of the recent work over the last couple of years of the K4C has been to collaborate through the Growth Management Planning Council on shared countywide greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, to pool resources and to use county resources to develop new tools and resources for local climate action. This includes a climate action toolkit for local cities to use to support their climate work and to best prioritize their resources in taking climate action. Emissions inventories for all 39 cities in the county, and I'll share some of the emissions data that's specific to Newcastle in the next couple slides, to support communities integrating climate into local comprehensive plan updates that are ongoing now. And as I already kind of mentioned, a lot of the work is around engagement in state and regional climate policy issues. We know that a lot of cities and even the county can't solve climate change on their own, so how do we weigh in and help shape climate action, helping at that regional and state level? So the K4C was a partner in this recent Puget Sound Regional Emissions Analysis Project, and many communities have identified that understanding what their local sources of emissions as a key first step in local climate action. But having every city do this on their own takes a lot of resources and is not the most efficient way to do it. So the K4C, the county, and regional entities and partners came together to do this first of its kind update of regional greenhouse gas emissions inventories. And so, for example, here's a snapshot of community scale emissions from the residents of Newcastle for 2019. And there's probably not a ton of surprises here if you're familiar with the issue, but identifying that building, energy usage, and on-road transportation are some of the biggest sources, and aviation or flight by local residents is another sometimes overlooked but important part of your community footprint. So there's data specific to all the cities in the county from this project. You can compare it to neighboring jurisdictions. So there's a bar graph of Newcastle's per person emissions compared to the countywide average compared to neighboring jurisdictions like Renton in this example. This project also provides consumption-based greenhouse gas emissions data. So this is more a look of the embodied greenhouse gas footprint of spending by all residents in the region. And so that's another useful piece of data for helping inform local climate action strategies. So some of the examples of current priorities for the K4C include data, the RE+, zero waste program, coordination and support, which I believe you have heard or may hear in future council opportunities. Happy to share more about that if it's helpful. Coordination on development and implementation of greenhouse gas related code issues, coordination and information sharing on local climate preparedness priorities. A big focus currently is trying to bring emergent large amounts of new funding from the Federal Inflation Reduction Act and the state budget that's supporting local climate action to help implement projects, everything from renewable energy to affordable housing to waste prevention projects and programs. So coordinating both on information sharing and collaborative joint grant funding opportunities to support local climate action is a big focus currently. Policy work around comprehensive plans and integrating climate into those plans. And heat pump programming is another shared interest between a lot of cities to help residents access incentives and also get educated and learn about how heat pumps can help them with reducing energy costs and reducing emissions and improving health in people's homes. So K4C budget considerations. So most work of the K4C is done by staff and elected officials. There's a small shared budget that is based on contributions from the partners. All of that money goes into a pot that the K4C partners decide what to use for. So in the past, it's been used for staff training, for communications and messaging programs, to help commission technical analysis. None of that money goes to county staff. It's all into that shared pot that then gets collaboratively decided on by K4C staff, and each K4C partner gets an equal vote in that budget decision-making process. So just in terms of specifics about how the K4C partners collaborate, there's the staff work, there's a steering committee, we meet once a month. That's where a lot of the work happens. On specific projects, like coordinating on a grant proposal, there's ad hoc staff meetings. Then there's an elected outreach committee, which is a self-selected cohort of local elected officials who are most excited, engaged on climate action. And they meet pretty frequently, especially during the state legislative session. If you were to join the K4C, you don't need to participate in that, but if it's an opportunity for local elected officials if they really want to get deeply engaged on local climate action. And then there's currently about twice a year elected official work sessions, and some of you may have participated or at least been invited to those. Executive Constantine convenes and hosts those, usually once in the spring and once in the fall. And yeah, how to join the K4C, all cities are welcome. We'd love Newcastle to join. The formal step is improving that interlocal agreement, which identifies a staff person to participate in the steering committee, and then signing on to the joint climate action commitments is optional but encouraged. In terms of specific budget considerations for Newcastle potentially joining, that would be $700 a year into that shared pot of money that the K4C partners decide its use of. So I'm happy to answer questions or share more about any specific elements of the K4C work.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Mr. Kuharek?
Kuharek or Kuharek?
Okay, I apologize.
No.
Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead.
Thank you. I will pivot back to questions. I just wanted to say a couple things. I think thank you so much, Matt, for coming and sitting patiently and working through different stuff. Matt, I sent the first email to Matt about us working with K4C in June of 2022. So Matt has been an amazing public servant working for the county, coming to engage with us. He gave this presentation fully to the Economic and Community Development Committee, and we unanimously, from the three of us there, recommended it to full council for approval consideration. So I think some things I just wanted to highlight about this. My favorite thing to point out is that we had the slide a few months back. We are quite literally landlocked by cities that have chosen to engage with this group and work on this issue, and we haven't taken that step yet. I think we have a community development director in Director Hoffman. I hope you can share your experiences as well, because they were really informative for me when we were talking about this, who has been a part of this group before in past cities he worked with. And I only brought this forward because he said absolutely he would be able to do it again and be able to navigate that and do all that. So the commitments, I think, are very reasonable and minimal. It's $700 a year, which is fair to say a drop in the bucket. It is 1 hour meeting for staff a month, and we can send different folks to that. Different members can go, and it gives us a whole lot. It gives us means to sort of have a stronger basis for looking for federal and state funding. It gives us, recognizing that our community development department, not all of them are going to know the nuance of climate policy to the level that maybe someone like Matt does, that works with this climate policy every day, that has the specific work group that's being convened. And it's a really great resource for us, especially as we go into comprehensive planning, as we go into look at all this. It gives us, it is such a huge, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a huge burden relief for our staff to have the resources to be able to plug in, to plan and actually acknowledge, climate change as an issue and plan for it within our city structure and how we operate. So I think this is a really great program. Sorry, I jumped ahead of the questions and was plugging it. I've been working with Matt for a while on this. I wanted to add those points, and I hope we can have more discussion. So I'll shut up now.
Okay, questions? Councilmember Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. In the meeting we had last Wednesday, we discussed this a little bit, not a great deal, but it was brought to us that downstream somewhere we probably would need a full-time employee to make this thing work for us. We're really not big enough to handle another full-time employee for another service that we want to get involved in. So that was my comment.
Director Hoffman, did you want to say something? I wasn't sure.
Yeah. The comment was mine, and it was more in response to what this program is and that it can be handled by existing staff. My example was the city of Snoqualmie, which was a founding member. Four-term Mayor Matt Larson was heavily committed to policy within the region and was able to enact multiple programs in partnership with K4C, some with the policies that K4C supports and some outside of that. He was able to have an intern from the program at University of Washington. Nicole Sanders was phenomenal for the program, and the majority of her full-time work was for climate and sustainability programs. So my comment was not specific to that we would need that. That was an example of the city of Snoqualmie and their needs. The immediate needs for joining this can be met by existing staff. We look forward to it. We have 3 staff members to cover that monthly meeting. We've already discussed it, and they're very excited.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. And Director Hoffman, can you expand a little bit on how this would help or benefit the city with the comp plan? Because I keep hearing about that, but I never remember the specifics.
Thank you, Councilmember. Most immediately, there's new legislation around climate and sustainability and requirements. I believe one of the House bills that we've been tracking does not require a climate element, but requires policies within our land use element and existing elements, some of which was the information presented on the slides. Existing staff can participate and be members of this partnership. What we can't be is subject matter experts to come up with our own individual policies for the city of Newcastle. We can amend the comprehensive plan. We can review policies and how they'll affect this community, but we certainly cannot forge forward with our own creation of policy. One of the immediate benefits of being a member of K4C is we don't need to be that subject matter expert. That pool of cities is that expertise, and that we would glean that greenhouse gas, the required policies to put into our comprehensive plan in this
periodic update merely by being members. So it far exceeds the $700. And that's just one example.
Okay, any other questions? Did you have a question?
Yep, Mayor Newing.
I can't see, Councilmember Clark, you're on.
Thank you very much, Mayor Newing. A couple questions. So maybe some clarification questions. It sounds like that you are a member of the King County already, but do I understand correctly that this group functions separately from King County? Am I understanding that correctly? So although you're a King County employee, this is a group separate from King County. Can you explain that for me? Maybe I missed something.
Yes, so I'm a King County staff person. This is a voluntary but formal partnership that's defined through the interlocal agreement. That's an agreement between a city who wants to join in King County, and the county supports the K4C by providing, staff that work on it, and the executive convenes the elected official work sessions, but it's doesn't commit any city or the county to do any particular action or policy. It's if that helps explain it.
Okay, so you mentioned training, so our money would be used to train staff or for communication. Is that what our money would be used for, the training and communication essentially?
So the K4C staff decide on what to use the money for each year. In the last 2 years, examples include the emissions inventory project. The K4C partners contributed to that project to broaden the scope of the project to include some city-specific data. And then another example was the staff decided actually on this comprehensive planning issue that we should develop model policies around climate change issues that could be a resource and provide technical assistance from a consultant to cities to use that resource. So those were two recent examples. Previous examples had been communications toolkit and also staff training around climate communications issues. So it changes from year to year, but is decided by the K4C partners.
The commitment of $700, seems really nice and small. What is your thoughts on that expanding, right? Because it's government, so inevitably it will get bigger. What is your thoughts on the city commitment for the $700, and where do you see that going? I mean, because I was reading through the information, and it kind of implies that there would be an increase if the group decides there's an increase, that there would be an increase to the cities, and then the city would just kind of either have to withdraw or agree to the increase. Am I understanding that correctly?
So through the whole K4C partnership, there hasn't been any cost increase since its inception about a little over a decade ago. The money that is provided is not the main power of the K4C. It's the staff time from especially King County, but also cities who want to lead on the issue, and then the elected official time and engagement. So the money part of it helps us do some good work, but it isn't a huge piece. And we've actually had discussions of some cities, if it is a major barrier to joining K4C, we've more contemplated, should we just do away with the fee because it's not a main driver. So it is possible that if all the K4C partners wanted to raise dues on themselves, then that is possible, but it would have to be a decision agreed to by at least 2/3 of the K4C, or actually it might be 75% of the K4C partners, and it's not currently a focus of discussion.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you so much for being here tonight. Motion, Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. I move to direct staff to prepare a resolution, interlocal agreement, and joint letter of commitment materials for the City of Newcastle's membership in the King County. Cities, climate, collaboration for City Council review and action at a future meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Charbonneau, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, to direct staff to prepare a resolution, interlocal agreement, and joint letter of commitment materials for the City of Newcastle's membership in the King County Cities Climate Collaboration for City Council review and action at a future meeting. Councilmember Charbonneau, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. I will briefly. Just to clarify, there's no requirement of us to hire more staff by joining this, and as long as there will never be a requirement for us to hire more staff. What this would do for us tomorrow, right away, or whenever this is brought back at a future meeting and approved, what joining this group would do for us is give our staff resources and save them time on comprehensive plan, give us actionable and connect us with resources for climate planning in a thoughtful way that is engaging with the rest of our region. We'd pay in $700 a year, which is incredibly modest when you look at the other groups that we work with and engage with. And we have all access to it as elected officials to go and engage with it as we choose. It's another option. And we have the option to, you can do work with K4C to come up with any climate things you'd like to see. I think this would be great to work with Newcastle Trails folks and all those kids that do their Eagle Scout and it's called Gold projects for Girl Scouts. I learned that to engage with this group. I think it's such a win-win. It is so minimal from us. It helps our staff. It helps us do better by climate. We can tell people an actionable item we're taking towards climate work, and it's a great group to be a part of. We have, it's chaired by our neighbor, Bellevue City Council members on. It's something that's just, to me, it's one of those things where it was introduced to me as a great program. Oh, wow, I can't believe you all aren't a part of that. And I think it's just something that would help our staff and something that we can commit to at any level that we want. And we can navigate what that is as we go. But it's a really, really thorough and I think thoughtful thing to do.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock, anything to add?
I mean, I agree with everything Councilmember Charbonneau said. I'll just add that the comprehensive plan update is a big undertaking for our staff, and so it looks like that this would immediately be able to help with that work and be more efficient and be able to just use resources and save our staff time. So that speaks to me a lot for moving forward with this. And then the other thing is, in the future, when I can see how it can benefit us is in the future when legislation comes down from the state on climate, and we're mandated to put that stuff into our code. This group can help us, again, do that more efficiently, or we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just copy and paste what we need to do for our code, and it saves a lot of time and energy. So that's why I support this.
Councilmember Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Dewing. Is this going to require some staff time to keep up with it and keep it going?
It will require staff time, existing staff resources. One of the lessons learned from COVID is remote meetings. So it'll actually be less staff time for the monthly meetings because there's no driving, there's no which city hosts this month. And so the actual commitment is not very much. And we need to know those subject matters anyway. So for what we're proposing tonight and what would be a future resolution is both manageable with the existing resources and knowledge and would not lead to any more staffing need. The example I used was a mayor that was very proactive in the region, took advantage of I can say this now, I don't work there, of every program that he became aware of because he wanted to be a leader in the Snoqualmie Valley. That's not Newcastle.
And at a time when we're trying to save staff time, it seems like we shouldn't be adding additional positions. So
Okay, we're not doing that, Councilmember Griffin. There's no motion on the floor to add personnel. All right, motion on the floor, direct staff made by Councilmember Charbonneau and seconded by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, to direct staff to prepare a resolution, interlocal agreement, and joint letter of commitment materials for the City of Newcastle's membership in the King County Cities Climate Collaboration for City Council review and action at a future meeting. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-1. Councilmember Griffin dissenting. Moving on to item 11.3, Arch Housing Trust Fund 2023 contribution. It is the Director Hoffman show tonight, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Matt. Collect my thoughts and move on to the next issue. We had the City Council held a study session on this topic. The new agenda bill goes into an issue about corrected numbers and proposes essentially a motion that we would not make a contribution to the Housing Trust Fund in this fiscal year, even though it's budgeted. The corrected numbers are shown in the agenda bill. It would not result in a deficit. There's already a verified surplus, and that motion can be made if desired by the council tonight.
Okay, any questions for Director Hoffman? Deputy Mayor Sherlock, did you have a question or did you? Oh, okay, go ahead. You were raising your hand though, right? Be discreet over there. Okay, no questions? How about a motion? Councilmember Lacotia.
I move to direct staff to not expend funds for a contribution in 2023 to the Arch Housing Trust Fund.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Lacotia, seconded by Councilmember Griffin, to direct staff to not expend funds for a contribution in 2023 to the Arch Housing Trust Fund. Councilmember Lacotia, would you like to speak to your motion?
I think Director Hoffman had explained to us last time, so I think we're good here. Thank you.
Councilmember Griffin, anything to add? Deputy Mayor Sherlock?
Thank you. So I understand this recommendation for this year. I just want to put on the record that I do not want it to be a normal thing for the city of Newcastle to not contribute to Arch. I've looked through everything and I've talked to a lot of staff members, and I understand that, you know, there will be a surplus still with them, and they're using a lot of our trust money to do some projects, which is great. But it's really, in my opinion, really important to continue to support Arch on a regular basis. So I will vote in favor of this tonight, but in the future, I'm going to push back a lot more.
Councilmember Charbonneau?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to explain. I will be voting no, and I wanted to explain that rather than just do it. I think the way this is presented to us, it's presented in a neatly packaged way where I think it makes sense. But I think when we look at the broader context and we look at us being a city that has been among the highest of year-to-year price increases, continually becoming a more cost exclusionary city, and you know, it's nice to say we're packaging it in this way, but I think the framing is everything here, and I think if we were actually exposed to the framing that I believe is the reality, and that I believe a lot of our residents feel that way too, have experienced it, of complete dearth of any affordable housing or affordable rent or all that. And we want to sit here and proclaim affordable housing. Like, I would encourage people to actually match that with action, and I would encourage people to be open to that in the future, and I would encourage people to be open to that when we go to our comprehensive plan. If we're not going to give these folks money. And I think it's easy to slash a line item off the budget, but I think, yeah, your checkbook is your value, so that's why I'm voting no.
Okay, anyone else? Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, Mayor Newing, thank you. Once we make a motion and a second, and we should be voting, the discussion should not be taking place afterwards. That's just a point of business.
I
that we need to
completely
take care of
agree.
that in the future.
I completely agree. And council, if you would please remember that. There's a motion on the floor to direct staff not to expend funds for a contribution in 2023 to the Arch Housing Trust Fund. Motion made by Councilmember Lacotia, seconded by Councilmember Griffin. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm sorry? Did you vote no? Okay. All right, motion carries 6-1 with Councilmember Charbonneau dissenting. All right, moving on, additional public comment. We do have one member of the audience signed up, so as a courtesy for the in-person, I would like to go ahead and call Paul White up to the podium.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Paul White. I live in University Place, which, as you know, makes me lesser in the eyes of most of your residents, because working for the city but not living in the city is sometimes a black mark. So I don't have a lot to say. You didn't think I would leave without saying goodbye. Shortly. And plus, you know, it's the end of the meeting. Most people have stopped listening by now. So it's okay. Take a deep breath. It's all going to be okay. Yes, change does happen. And yes, the city manager and the council are not only entitled to restructure the city, but really you're responsible to do so when it's necessary. Okay. So I'm not here to complain about your decision or to appeal to you. If I wanted to do that, I would have spoken during the earlier part of the meeting, or I would have lobbied you all before the meeting. Right? I simply have an observation. All current salaried positions for the city of Newcastle are in the 2023 budget through the end of the year. And yes, I know that in order to balance that budget, you had to take money from reserve, not an insignificant amount of money, okay? But that, in fact, was the decision that this very council made in order to balance that budget. So, my observation in the form of a question is, why did you decide to do this way? There are two things, and I apologize to to City Manager Pingle and to Director Hoffman, because they've already heard this part of the sermon. There are two things in life that matter: what you do and how you do it. And this didn't have to be done this way. You could have announced now at the beginning of your budget cycle, or even earlier, because this has been worked on for some time, indefinite amount of time, that this was the plan, that there was to be a restructure, that staffing would be reduced and reorganized, that would have given the three of us and whoever else will end up being eliminated in this process the opportunity not only to assist you with the transition, yes, we would have done that, but to make arrangements for ourselves so that we could continue to reliably support our families. So here's the thing. This wasn't an emergency. You wouldn't be joining K4C if it was an emergency. I will wrap up. You didn't have to spring this on us this way without a warning. I'm going to be okay. But I'm very concerned about my colleagues, and I'm concerned about you as a government. I'm concerned about what spirit is animating the government that is sitting here convened tonight. I know what spirit is animating my decisions, and I will certainly keep you in my thoughts and prayers as you continue to make decisions that don't need to be made harder than they already are.
Thank you. Any further audience comment from those in attendance? Director Bronze.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have one virtual, and Tam, please go ahead. You're being promoted to panelist.
Thank you.
You're still muted.
Thank you. Tamara Kameen from Olympus. And I would just like to say that I would like to commend our city manager for coming in and doing a review of our situation in terms of his staff. And that he gave a recommendation that he felt was going to help our city be more efficient. And obviously, a head count is one of the largest portions of our general fund budget, and therefore it is one thing that needs to be really focused on by the head of our staff, and in particular our city manager. So I commend him for making the recommendation, and I also commend the council for voting in favor of that recommendation. And it is a difficult thing to do. Reorganizations are very difficult to do, and they are, especially when they impact existing employees. But it takes a lot of good leadership to go ahead and follow through and execute that kind of a move. So I would like to commend both the city manager and the council for supporting this. And certainly the vote has nothing to do with the quality of what has been produced by existing personnel in existing positions. They've done a lot of good work. If we had more people, they would do more good work. So it's not an issue of doing good work or not. It's an issue of how we are here to support our citizens and our city. And I appreciate what's being done. Obviously, we are a contract city, and if there are gaps, we can use consultants to help fill in some of the gaps, and consultants can be very effective also. So I would like to just commend the city manager and the council for taking this action. And I did read through the budget amendments for tonight that you did not discuss, but I noticed that two things. One was we came up with $1.3 million additional money for the general fund from last year on the budget, which was great. However, in the general fund, our revenue minus expenses was $545,000 in the negative, and now that has jumped to $677,000 in the negative. So we have more of a deficit, and perhaps this reorganization will address that. And I don't know if you will address that in the new budget amendment, but that would be an opportunity. So keep in mind that we're here as a city to handle the needs that we have, and sometimes we can't do all of the wants. So that's the function of priorities and being efficient. So I just wanted to commend the city manager and the council. Thank you.
Okay, moving back to any further public comment on virtual? Okay. Moving on, item number 13, planning calendar. City Manager Pingle.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. For the May 16th City Council meeting, we do have the fiscal sustainability study session on. We currently have that scheduled for 5 o'clock, just so that we have plenty of time to walk through the model. I do anticipate getting the model out to the council as soon as I can get it out to you. And then at this point, we just have our pavement management construction contract on the consent agenda. We'll move the budget amendment to the May 16th meeting in general business, and then we'll have our 2021 International Building Codes being added to the NMC as well. Any questions on that?
Any questions? I don't see any. Okay, with that, I'll adjourn the meeting.